life with One Nation's been the only consistent political party for the last 20 years?
They're not talking about you. All right, well, let me tell you, One Nation is talking about you.
It's like the media's run away from One Nation. They're too scared to ask us any questions, mainly because we're straight talkers and we've got the answers.
This is like a call to arms. You guys need to start making the real decisions and who you're going to vote for.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the ExCandidates. It's episode 4, so we're very excited to be back. Again, my name's Tripp, ex-candidate for One Nation in Warringah. Also joined by Rebecca Thompson, who was the candidate for Hume, and Zahra from Macarthur. So how are you going tonight, guys?
Yeah, good.
Very good, thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, and we are very privileged to have a guest tonight, Dr. John Harries. He's a physicist with a 30-year career at the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, known as ANSTO, including 3 years as a Counsellor in Nuclear Science at the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C. He was also an advisor to the Royal Commission into the British tests in Australia. He is a past president and current secretary of the Australian Nuclear Association, and he has been a principal author of many ANA submissions on nuclear energy to parliamentary inquiries. It's our pleasure to have you, Dr. Harries, on the show. How are you tonight?
Good. Well, very good. Thank you, Stephen. It's nice to be here and to be able to talk about something I'm very keen about. So.
Yeah. Well, we are as well, so it's definitely our pleasure to have you here.
So happy to have you on, so thank you very much for coming.
Well, just a bit of a background. I joined the Australian Atomic Energy Commission back in 1970. When I joined, we were about to have the first nuclear power station in Australia. It was going to be installed in Jervis Bay. And it went through the whole tender process. And, but at that point, the electricity was going to be twice as expensive as the coal price, which we had in New South Wales, was ultimately tabled. So that's almost about 50 years ago. We were about to have a nuclear plant in Australia. And now again, we're talking about nuclear plants, which is very good.
We're a bit slow acting in this country. We have to have a long think about things first.
Well, it takes the government policies of trying to go to renewables to make nuclear cheaper than everything else, right?
Yes. I guess the important thing is lots of countries put in nuclear because of the security of supply, like South Korea and much of Europe. They want security of supply and they don't have a lot of other sources, so nuclear is important to them. For us, I think Australia is going to be very important with the low carbon emissions and having some dispatchable power in the system, which is not coal and gas.
All right, do you want to kick it off, Rebecca?
Yeah, sure. So with the news that we've had in the last week with regards to blackouts the south coast of Australia, do you think inevitably we will have nuclear on the Australian power grid?
I think it's inevitable at some point, but I'm getting worried that it's taking so long to get the first steps. We really have to get to the point of looking at it as a viable option. We still have prohibitions in Australia. These are prohibitions that stop having any nuclear power in Australia. That's federal legislation. New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland also all have legislation stopping nuclear power. So that means that if a proponent wants to come in and offer some nuclear option, there's not much incentive for them to be serious about selling to us.
Why did that come in with the legislation to begin with? Why was nuclear? What was the argument to ban nuclear in Australia?
It was really a bit of horse trading. They wanted some legislation. They wanted to upgrade the federal nuclear regulator, ANSTO, in order to get some senators on board. These particular senators opposed nuclear power, but they were happy to have research reactors, so they insisted on putting a prohibition into the legislation. And then when we were getting a new research reactor, they said, we're happy to have this new research reactor, we'll allow the legislation through the Senate, provided this legislation doesn't allow a power reactor. So it was a bit of horse trading. How do you get enough senators to pass legislation?
You have to vote the One Nation senators in. That's how you'll happen.
Or Ranger Island senators.
Well, okay, so small modular reactors, they're the hot topic at the moment because they seem to be, everyone's talking about them. I've heard Matt Canavan actually said that technology is not really ready yet. Is the technology ready for a small modular reactor? And does Australia have the ability to manufacture their own?
Well, I mean, most of the reactors, there's about 56 large reactors being built around the world at the moment under construction. And these all tend to be reactors more than about 1,000 megawatts. They're large reactors, probably too large for our grid, which is so spread out. So there's been a lot of comment about small modular reactors. International, globally, the small modular reactors are more of a niche thing. For smaller grids or further out, probably good for Australia if it's less than say 300 megawatts. But as it's probably true to say that if you went out with the checkbook today, you couldn't buy a small modular reactor that would be suitable for the grid. There's lots of them around operating. Say there's 120 marine small modular reactors operating mainly submarines all around the world, nuclear submarines. And these are all small reactors and they've been running for 40, 50 years. But there's several designs of small modular reactors which are going through licensing processes in Europe, in America. And if you're trying to start, it's a good way in for, say, for Australia. It allows a small amount of money. It's easier to put them into places of old coal fire stations, and it's easier to put them, say, at remote sites like mine sites, which allow the process.
Wow.
So,
Okay. Yep.
I wouldn't exclude the large reactors, but probably for Australia, we're going to be talking about these new small modular reactors. It's going to take us that long before we get the regulations up and running and the capabilities of putting in. But the last part of your question was, can we manufacture them in? I don't think we will. I think we're going to buy the nuclear part. We can build all of the rest of it, the steam generators, the turbines, all those sort of things. They're all sort of standard technology. But the nuclear part, the whole point about the small modular reactors is they're built in a factory and we go and buy one, I think.
Would they come from like Rolls-Royce in the UK? They're a big proponent of.
I mean, they're a good option. South Koreans are building one, and the Chinese are building one. Chinese got just started a new technology. They just get connected to the grid, which is high temperature one. Several American ones, the new scale ones. There's a whole lot of different ones that it's like there's a big industry out there. And there are lots of proponents building things that they think this industry is going to do.
And do you need to with a small modular reactor, does it need to be close to a water supply so that you can keep the reactor cool, like with water fed to it, or is the technology now different to having to pump water through the whole system all the time?
While it's running, it's the same as a coal plant. You have to have a cooling system. So, if you a coal plant, you either have water cooling or you have air towers, and you need that. The big issue about it, and the other thing is, what you're probably talking about is after you close the reactor down, take all the power off and turn it down, you still have to keep it cool. Small modular reactors will have enough internal cooling so that they can be walked away from it and they can just look after themselves. Whereas large reactors still have to have some cooling going through. So often the designs have extra water tanks, extra systems, emergency core cooling, which is there just in case you lose total power or the operators all drop dead or something.
Wow.
You have a tsunami.
Yeah, tsunami like that was Fukushima, right? So yeah, fair enough. Okay, very cool.
Everyone's got to, you've got to cover those sorts of things.
And what about the safety aspect? Like, obviously, comparing a small modular reactor to something like a plant like Chernobyl, which is 50 years old or longer, obviously the safety mechanisms would be a lot better in nowadays, I would assume. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, Chernobyl was a very different system, wasn't it? That was a Soviet era reactor, didn't have any containment. The reactor manager was also the town mayor and had to run the local industry around. There was a whole lot of issues with it. We had photocopies to put instructions out. And they tried to do a safety test at 5 a.m. in the morning. The last minute had a rule. The rule said you have to do a safety test at some point. No one sort of said, well, this is a stupid point to do it. There's no purpose. All current reactors have containment. They've all learned lessons. I think lots of Russian reactors are really successful.
Now, last time I spoke to you, and I spoke to you in the lead up to my campaign just to get some more information about nuclear, you were talking about these small modular reactors could be built on the sites of coal plants and fed directly into the existing transmission lines. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't have to build any new transmission lines or anything like that. We just tap into the existing infrastructure.
Yes, and the cooling system's already there.
Okay.
They might need to be modified. If it's a water course or something, that'd be straightforward. Straightforward to put them in.
Where do we get one? Sorry.
What we do have to have, we have to have a nuclear regulator. We've got a nuclear regulator in Australia, which is only for Commonwealth reactors like the Opal reactor. So we have to be convinced, I guess, that the reactor will be safe. If buying something from overseas, we have to have our own regulator that says this isn't safe. But the overseas regulator has done the right thing, proved it's safe, the safety case is all good, and then gives the approval for construction and for siting, construction and then operation. It's all manageable, it's all doable, and it's got to be done.
And what are the things?
We're going to say the UAE, the Arab Emirates put in, they decided to have reactors in 2009. Created a regulatory system and imported regulators from around the world, including one from Australia. Put a cheaper Panzer on board. And now they've got 4 large reactors operating in the Arab Emirates, saving them having to use some of their oil to generate electricity.
One of the other things you told me was that once you build one of these small modular reactors, you could just continue to build more and more like next to each other, kind of build them up like Lego blocks or something.
So some of them, like the NuScale one, is certainly like that. They're each quite small, only about 80 megawatts, but they talk about having a bank of them, like 8 or 12. So you end up with a large amount of power, which means you can then get a lot of continuous power. You've got much more control. You can move them in or out, and financing is much better. But other small modular reactors are bigger, say 300 megawatts, and they would just be by themselves.
Yeah, okay.
So in essence, you could actually have, like, say you wanted 3 or 4 on site, then could you have 1 or 2 running and then 2 as backup? Because what is the operating time for a nuclear power plant before it has to be shut down and then refurbished? Kind of, does that happen with nuclear with small modular nuclear power?
Yes, they do. They have to be refueled every time. It might be 18 months. It might be 2 or 3 years. Then they've got to go offline for a month or so, where they're opened up and new fuel is put in, and the spent fuel is taken out and fuel's rearranged. So for big reactors, it takes about a month out of the system.
Yeah, so with the modular ones, you could kind of have a backup system, so you could actually have a solid base load energy, basically non-stop. You have two as backup, and you kick them in and swap them around, kind of thing. So that's fairly versatile, I feel. sorry, Rebecca, I jumped in on you there. Have your turn.
That's okay, no problems. So what is the cost of these reactors, and would they push up electricity prices?
Look, we don't really know how much it's going to cost Australia. But if the reactors are being built overseas, then they're going to be comparable price to other systems. It's always been that they might be a little bit more expensive than a coal plant would be, but not much more. They're quite affordable. They're going to be much cheaper than batteries, much other backup systems, cheaper than pumped hydro.
Okay.
And they've been running them all the time. But until we open the system up and get a proper quote, it's very hard to know what the final cost will be. I think it's going to be very affordable.
Thank you.
I assume the first one we would build would be the most expensive, but moving forward after that, the price would even out.
And I think we'd be buying one which has been proven overseas as well. Much better than buying a reactor which has been operating, has been the regulator. Regulatory approval overseas.
We just handed over, what was it, $385 billion or something like that for cancelling the nucleus, the diesel sub
That's right.
project. So we could have used that money towards putting nuclear power plants in anyway. So that number's not correct. I don't know exactly what the figure was to break that contract, but anyway, I just thought,
I think it was millions rather than billions.
Yeah, maybe it was probably millions. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed anyway, but who knows?
But that's a good example because nuclear subs are so much better than diesel subs, and it was just accepted that this was a good decision. We went nuclear without great traumas or. I was quite amazed, really. I thought there'd be sort of people marching in the streets or something, but no one's really accepted it. It's a better technology, so go for it.
There seems to be a lot more support for nuclear these days.
Yes, I think so. People I talk to, they're quite. Everyone wants to find out more about it, and more than half of them are keen to adopt it.
That's awesome. That's good news because that's what we're going to be pushing. Especially if I run for state, I might try and start pushing that as well. I have to speak to the party, but so uranium is touted as the optimum fuel source that we would use. Would uranium be your preferred choice? And is there other fuel sources that we could use, like plutonium or thorium?
Right, going backwards a little bit. The thorium is uranium is naturally fissile. It absorbs a neutron and will fission. With thorium, you've got to get 2 neutrons into it. So it's very much harder to make thorium work. The Indians tried for many years, and they were making special fast reactors in order to make enough, to use enough thorium. Thorium's very hard. It's good to extend the uranium, but it's not good as a sole source. Plutonium's harder because you've got to have other reactors to make the plutonium. So most reactors these days actually get about a third of their, or 20% of their power from the plutonium in the fuel. Because within the fuel, the neutron comes in, and sometimes it causes fission, sometimes it goes into plutonium. This plutonium is also fissile, so it fuels in the reactor for a long time. It gets more and more plutonium, and that plutonium is used or becomes part of the fuel. So
okay,
we can't really use plutonium as a sole source. It's good to have it.
Okay, so then uranium is obviously what we would use. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, because I'm not. You have so much more knowledge than me. I have no idea. So it's, So okay. So uranium's good. Okay.
But can I just go back further on that uranium one? Natural uranium itself doesn't have enough of the isotope, which is good fuel. So you do need to enrich uranium in the isotope of uranium-235. And that takes and it's done overseas. So we in Australia, we send our uranium, mine it, export it, it's enriched overseas, and then put into fuel elements and goes through reactors.
Okay, that was what I was going to ask you that, because so when we use uranium and then it gets like depleted of its radioactivity, of neutrons.
Uranium 235.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we re-enrich it and use it again?
Well, going back a little bit, uranium, when you get out of the ground, there's two isotopes. You get uranium 238, which is 93%, and 0.7% is uranium 235. And in a reactor, you have to enrich the amount. You've got to increase the amount of uranium 235 to about more like 4 or 5 or 6%, and that makes it efficient reactor fuel. There are some reactors that take natural uranium. You have to use heavy water for those. The Canadians do it, but most of the other reactors require enrichment.
And can you just explain, you've told me in the past, so uranium is natural, but plutonium is not.
Yes.
So plutonium is kind of constructed or made or something, is it?
Made in a reactor.
Yeah.
If you put uranium in a power reactor, after a year, there's a certain amount of plutonium in it.
Okay.
When back in the Manhattan Project, this is talking about these things too much, but they had a whole. In about 3 years, they built about a dozen reactors. If you put them into uranium into the reactor and take it out quickly, after a few weeks or months or years, you get high quality plutonium out of it. That's what they're using for the bombs. The normal reactor, you can't. If it's been in a reactor for a year or so, the plutonium is no longer suitable for weapons.
That's because it's mainly depleted. Sorry, that's because it's now kind of depleted.
It's got too many other isotopes in it.
Yeah. Okay.
Too many
Sorry,
other
Steve.
isotopes, so it doesn't.
It's taking you back to high school physics, Adam, isn't it?
I left in year 10. I didn't get to understand all this. This is everything I understand a little bit. I get the isotope thing and stuff like that from research, a little bit of research that I have done. So, I'm just massively curious. So that's why I'm asking. It's very rare that I would have somebody like you to ask these questions to. So sorry for the school lesson.
One of my main concerns personally with nuclear energy before I did my research was the waste. Now, can you address this? What do people mean when they refer to nuclear waste? Like, is that an accurate description?
No, it is waste that comes out of a reactor. What it is really is spent fuel. There's lots of radioactive wastes.
So it's not
radioactive is a problem.
Where like green sludge will be coming out of the side of the plant.
No, what comes out of a reactor is spent fuel, which is a ceramic containing this radioactivity. So the ceramic is a solid. It's contained within the fuel element, and that's the waste which comes out. It's highly radioactive. Got lots of radiation. If you vaporised it, which I don't know how you ever do it, it would be an inhalation acid.
All right.
So it's quite poisonous if you eat it, but really it's in a solid. It's like eating cups and saucers.
And some of that can be used again for like medical uses and things like that. Is that correct?
No, well, I think it's more if French reprocess the spent fuel and get new fuel out of it. So you can reprocess it, you get uranium out, you get plutonium out, and you remove the nasty fission products and then put them back in the fuel element, so you get new fuel. In some cases, you can put it into different sorts of reactors. But really, the waste is one of those. It's a solid. It's stored in concrete. All the reactors, people around the world are looking after this waste for 50 years since reactors have been run. As long as it's in a properly engineered facility and properly managed, it can be really looked after. As far as I can see, well, I can't see why it can't be ultimately disposed of into, geologically where the uranium first originally came from. We're taking the radioactive material out of the soil. We take the uranium. It's a long-lived radioactivity. It's got to be put back into a place that is isolated from everyone.
I think that's a main point that we really need to highlight, because myself, before I started researching this, one of the things you told me was you're taking the uranium out of the soil, you're putting it in the reactor, you're depleting it, and then storing it on site, and then potentially putting it back into where it came from, or another site.
It'll be a different element. It'll be a different radioactivity, but it'll be a different element.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Would it be more radioactive than the uranium because now it's got isotopes in it that make it more into plutonium?
It'll be more radioactive because the stuff it's shorter lived half. It's got shorter half-lives than the uranium. There's less atoms of it, but because it's shorter half-life, it's more radioactive.
Okay, so it's like I think I was speaking to somebody actually else who I was doing a job for at their home, and it would have like a 24,000 half-life.
But one of the isotopes in there, which will be a plutonium one, has that. Most of the isotopes in there have half-lives of, minutes, years. Lots of have 30 years. There's lots of different, and all the isotopes are really just normal elements. Radioactive isotope.
Okay.
But certainly there's this 24,000 year thing is the plutonium that might be in it, which will be in it.
And you were saying that you could actually,
it can be managed.
And you were saying that
when you talk about the, all the other energy sources, they all have dreadful waste issues. Talking about solar panels, we're talking about 1 million tonnes of electronic waste.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing that's against having solar panels. And coal has millions of tonnes of coal ash a year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only reason why Australian coal's pretty good, because it has an 8% compared to a 30% ash rate. That's why they call it clean coal, because that's why everyone wants it, because there is actually less waste product from it. But when
you look at it, the amount of coal going into a coal, 1,000 megawatt coal plant is probably 2 million tonnes a year.
Yeah,
10% of 2 million tonnes is an awful lot of coal ash.
Absolutely.
There's lakes of it around Hunter Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the moment, that's all we've got. That's why we're trying to get this nuclear thing, get people to start wanting nuclear, because everything we've got is coal at the moment, and we're being faced with intermittent power issues, which is crazy. But anyway, whose turn is it next to ask a question? Because I'm going to keep chiming in. Sorry, guys.
It's mine. What are some of the misconceptions around nuclear that annoy you the most?
I think everyone says there's 50, we won't consider it because it might be 15 years and to have it. But really, constructing a nuclear plant is normally most of them take about eight years to build, construct. That's the average in the last few years, about 8 years. There's been a few long-term ones that have got quotes, one in Finland and one in the US. But we really have to, we're talking about the long term. History doesn't end in 2050 or 2030. We've still got to keep the power running a long time. We just got to continue doing it. So I think nuclear's still got to, it's going to be a major part of it in the long-term energy system.
Absolutely. We're only ever going to want more energy anyway. Everything's requiring more energy. Even a household these days, everything's now more electronic. I even just charging mobile phones, and I've got, I'm sitting in my office right now, and I have 6 computers going. I have 3 printers going. I've got 4 mobile phones in here. That's just me. So
Going on there.
well,
What are
because
you doing?
it's relatively opposite.
It keeps you warm. Keeps you warm.
Well,
You're
yeah,
right.
and I've just got that 100 hertz hum. That just puts me to sleep eventually. So it's quite nice. But okay. So what was I going to say? I've got a little bit of a question here. How much energy would 1 ton of uranium produce compared to 1 ton of coal?
No, I can't tell you, but it's a very large number.
It's a very
compared to coal. I mean, basically 30 tons of spent fuel. Because a 1,000 megawatt reactor has about 30 tons of spent fuel coming out a year.
So 1,000 megawatts
At the same time, a coal plant will use about 3 million tons.
3 million. Okay. So for
100,000 times more energy.
100,000 times more energy from 30 tons, you say? Wow.
I mean, I'm just dividing 30 tons by 3 million.
Wow.
Are you right?
Oh, I need a calculator. You're the genius. Here's my phone. I'll be on there. Terrible etiquette. I'm trying to work it all out for you. But let's keep it in more like lay terms for myself. Let's say there's far more energy potential from a ton of uranium compared to say a ton of coal. It would be just exponentially different.
Well, it's the order of 100,000. Well,
Wow.
it must be more than that. It might be more. But Australia's exports of uranium are about a third the energy content of all the exports of coal.
Okay.
And uranium goes out in a few containers, and coal goes out in hundreds of ships.
I'm just going to plug. Speaking of charging my computer, I've got to put my computer on charge. Sorry, excuse me for a second.
If we did get to the point where we did have nuclear reactors, nuclear power in Australia, would we have enough talent in terms of engineers and those sorts of people in the country to be able to look after them, or would we have to import a lot of those people?
We'd certainly build up a talent. I mean, the thing is, we'd be probably buying a reactor, but part of the purchasing process would be having enough training in. We put a new reactor in Lucas Heights near Sydney. It was a research reactor, and that was really training up a whole lot of people, young engineers, a range of other people. And they were trained on site and became good. And also some came from overseas, I think. But we've got a lot of engineering talent. We've got the capability. We've got nuclear engineering courses at University of New South Wales and ANU. And now they want to increase them. There's a whole lot of scholarships being offered at the moment associated with nuclear submarines, or people to increase on their capability in nuclear engineering. So I'm capable of engineering capability in Australia, and also other things you need.
Sounds like job creation to me.
No, it's job maintaining, isn't it?
Well, we certainly have enough uranium to service them, so. Is there anything else you'd like to comment on that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, no, I think we probably covered the No, I can't do anything to add at the moment. But
how many nuclear reactors do you see being optimum in Australia? Like, obviously, you said they'd all be kind of, you try and build them near existing coal plants, but how many do you think we need to service the energy requirements for Australia?
I think 5 or 10 large ones.
Yeah.
But equally, lots of the small reactors could well go into mine sites and remote locations and stop the need for diesel and other things. Lots of these small modular reactors could go straight to a mine site and be very effective. It's a bit horses for courses, I think, but it's a nice, cheap Canada's spending a lot of money on this small modular reactors because they have lots of remote sites in very cold locations. And Canada's also got large numbers of big reactors, so state provinces like Ontario are almost have very low carbon emissions because nearly all their electricity comes from nuclear. But they also have this need for remote locations.
Just quickly as well, in America they run off, I think it's 110 volt. Would we have to change our voltage system here? No?
No. Well, that's just the end. I think all their power lines are probably similar to ours. They made a mistake, I think, early and put this 110 volt in, and it's hard to get enough energy through it. You've got to get thicker wire, you've got to have much more current. I think it adds a bit more lethal.
Yeah, and would they be completely dispatchable? Like you can turn them off and on depending on when you need them.
Well, it takes a little while for them to turn on and off. They're all being designed now, so you can increase the power by factor 2 in an hour or so.
Okay.
So you can go up and down, but you wouldn't want to do it too quickly.
Because then we'd have a Chernobyl again. Is that what that's right? I watched the documentary or that movie that they had on Netflix about Chernobyl, and I'm sure it's not 100% accurate, obviously, but
quite nice. That was quite a good one. One of them was.
Yeah, excellent. Bex, your turn.
Just a last question. Where can we follow your work? Do you have social media at all?
The Australian Nuclear Association has things on Twitter. We have not much on Facebook, but some. We've got a website. We're just trying to talk through it. It's hard to really know how to influence the whole debate.
Some of the
Twitter people are quite good.
Twitter, okay. Thanks.
Oh well, you're very gracious to give us your time tonight to discuss these issues, and hopefully, I think you've definitely convinced me. I came into this in the beginning of my campaign, not really sure about nuclear energy, and then in speaking to you, you've definitely got me on the path of being converted. So at least that's one person. You probably got Adam now as well.
I was in. As soon as I read up on it just a little bit, I was just kind of like, why aren't we doing this? No emissions. It comes out of the ground already radioactive. We're not doing really anything to it. It goes back into the ground radioactive. I mean, I agree with all those. I can't see any issue with it. I have one more quick question. I'm really sorry. This is unfortunately I'm a politician kind of like as well. So, if somebody, say argument's sake, we're walking in the bush, and you came across natural uranium in the ground.
Yeah.
If you held it because you didn't know what it was, would that be poisonous to you?
No, natural uranium is not very radioactive. It's a bit poisonous though. So where the range of uranium mine used to be this green stuff spread on the ground above where the uranium ore body was, and that was a bit poisonous.
Okay.
But I don't think you're going to find any bits of uranium. If you dig in your soil, you'll find some. If you dig in your garden, you'll find some plutonium in your garden.
Okay.
I don't think it happens because from the bomb tests back in the 1950s, they spread plutonium around the world. 50 tons of it.
I've always said that. I always figured that they would have, the bombs and everything, it's all one cup of the earth. And every time we do anything like that, it would just spread around, I would imagine. So I figured that everything's kind of radioactive anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of radioactive. You're radioactive. You've got radioactive potassium in you. If you go, we've grown, Earth, life started on Earth in a radioactive Earth. There's radiation around us all the time. From the thorium, the uranium, potassium, and what's in your body. So, you don't want to get close to someone, you radiate.
Ah. So we
If you're
should
on a
use it.
plane, you get 10 times more radiation, so don't catch planes.
Wow. So we should use
It's
it.
a natural part of work, better life. I think our bodies have adapted to these low levels of radiation.
All right, and that's that millicycle, or there's a name for it, MYS. Is that right?
I don't know what to do. No.
No, what I'm talking about, milliscamples, or there's a, sorry, anyway.
Millisieverts.
Anyway.
Millisieverts. That's a unit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, no worries. And that's what they base safe exposure.
When you put a guy in Canada or a radiation measure, you measure the radiation in millisieverts.
All right, there
You
you
take
go.
it on a plane, it goes faster. If you live in a brick house, you get more radiation than in a wooden house. Concrete, you get more radiation. So we don't worry about those sorts of things.
No, fair enough. Well, I'd like to thank you for answering my questions, and sorry for chiming in that last minute. We did have the last question, but then I just thought of something else. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, John. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Nice to talk to the three of you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
How was that?
Very educational.
Are you convinced of nuclear in Australia?
Well, I mean, we know we need something, moving into the future, and like from our perspective, or my perspective, I know that renewables is just a bunch of garbage. So this is the better alternative.
And renewables create more garbage.
Yeah, I've never seen you so excited out of it.
I know, right?
Look, I should have stated.
How funny! He said to you that you were waffling on.
That's right. Well, I do waffle on. I'm the waffler guy, right?
I know, but he just said it.
That's right. So you could be Trippy, you could be Bex, and I'll be the waffler. Riddle me this, riddle me that. Right? But no, I think he was amazing, and I'm excited. I really should have probably stayed in school and studied a bit harder or something. So note to self, next time round, eh?
It's not too late to study. You can still study.
Not nuclear science and physics and all that.
Why not?
Well, I'm too busy trying to be a politician now.
And then think about like what wasted talent we've got the talent of people in Australia to be physicists like that, and nuclear has been banned for so long. Like, why? If we were smart about this, like you look at France and how many nuclear power stations they have. Australia's a pretty what's the word? I don't want to say safe. But, like we don't have earthquakes and tsunamis and. A geological structure is pretty stable. Maybe that's what stable. Australia is very stable, so you think that it would be a great place for nuclear energy.
Well, it would be. Well, low seismic activity. Low seismic activity, as far as the nation goes, we've got low risk of tsunami and tidal waves and things like that. So it's kind of like pretty. We don't hardly ever have any like. Tornadoes and hurricanes and big events. I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is hail and, bushfire.
What do you think people's biggest aversion to nuclear is?
The Simpsons. Because then you have somebody like Homer looking after the plant. Come on, that's what they think. There was an article about that actually,
because the news tells them it's bad.
Yeah, but they don't say that. Is it just the waste? Is that as he said, it's not really like it doesn't even. He said it comes out like almost ceramic.
Yeah, so it's encased. It is ceramic. It is a ceramic casing.
Yeah.
So that's from the research that I also did. And I asked. Remember, we were working out the questions and things like this, Trippy, and I said to him, why can't we just? Because you told me, obviously from what he said, about how it already comes out of the ground radioactive, and then we can just put it back. And I said to you, why don't we just put it back where we got it from once we've used it?
Yeah, well, that's what he said.
Well, there you go. Problem solved. No waste. It's got radioactive and then radioactive going back. Ooh.
What do you think, Rebecca? Are you all in on nuclear now?
I'd feel very safe in John's hands. Like, he's reassured me he knows what he's, talking about. And, yeah, he's somebody that should be, like, in our parliament sort of taking charge of that area. Not
Well,
just
he's very calm and measured.
Yeah, like, it's a very interesting person to listen to. I would definitely, like, go to, as a professor in university or something, you'd probably look forward to his classes or his seminars. He's, very interesting.
100%. It would be the rest of the university that I would hate, but going to one of his classes would be very, very exciting.
I'll give you his number after this, Adam, so you can make
No,
it.
No, don't do it.
do that.
Don't do it, because I'll be calling him at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, wait, how about we do this? If we can run nuclear subs off it, can we run cars off it?
Cars, yeah.
That'd be cool. Like, come on. Green as.
So the next thing we'll get to is something that I'm sure Rebecca will be very excited about. Hold on. What do you think about this, Rebecca?
I feel like I've won the lottery, to be quite honest.
I just love it how the media have been speaking, and I don't know why they do this. They've been talking for weeks about how she was going to lose. She came 5th. She didn't even sneak in. She romped home. Romped it.
Because they never say anything that's truthful.
But why? It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you? Why would you?
Probably to give people like me anxiety for the last fortnight, which it has done.
Look at this one. Look at her hair.
Who's that? The Cannabis Party or?
That's Amanda Stoker.
Oh, that's the Nationals.
Yeah.
Well, the comment I was reading was they were talking about her and the Cannabis Party potentially knocking her off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No.
Like, literally, the comments are saying it was between Pauline and the Cannabis Party.
And the guns one as well, wasn't it?
All I heard was the Cannabis Party, and I'm thinking, what the heck?
It is hard until that preference button is pushed. Like, it does come down to preferences, but yeah, I mean, they always. One of my Sam the Stat Man, who we might have on in the next couple of weeks, he's always telling me that the right side of politics don't have good preference discipline. Well, I think this time around they have had good preference discipline. So she's over the line. She's back in the parliament, and I think that's a good thing for us.
Well, I got to tell you something, guys. I feel just that little bit safer, because when Labor got in, I was just devastated, to be honest with you. I was upset. I was upset. It took me about a week to get over it. Not that I don't hate Labor or anything like that, but
Is that also to get over the fact you didn't win?
Yeah, that took 3 weeks, and I'm still getting over that. But but when Labor got in, I was kind of like just disenchanted. I'm thinking, because it's not just, it's a different kind of like regime. It's a change of government. I really didn't find any confidence in Mr. Albanese. So I hope that he does a few things that he promised, and I hope he does lead the country for the better.
Like what? He hasn't even been in the country long enough to do anything.
Well, what happened? He was like, didn't he and Penny Wong just jump in a plane and scoot within
within
before
the 24 hours?
Yeah, they were gone. It was like,
It
wow.
was Solomon Islands, I think, and then Indonesia, France. Was it France? Somewhere. He hasn't been here.
Did he go to Davos?
No.
No, he didn't do that.
Because Davos was before the election.
Was it?
I think so.
No, Davos they met after the election. They met the Sunday after the election.
He had that other thing. What's it called? Where it's only a few leaders. No, it's got another name. Can't think. But there was, I think, the president of Japan.
The Quad meeting.
The Quad. That's the one. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
All right, we're going to try.
And
we're
then
gonna-
Jacinta Ardern was here recently as well.
And then they traded paint. He bought us some records or something like that, vinyl. So that's
Really?
good. Oh, yeah.
we're going to try playing this video. I haven't tried playing a video yet, so we'll see how this goes.
This is what it's like to road trip in an electric car here in Australia. This is a Hyundai Ioniq 5, that's it with full charge, and we were driving from Sydney to Canberra and Canberra to Sydney in one day using third-party chargers and not using a Tesla supercharging network. The car itself is a great road trip vehicle. Super spacious, great seats, great speakers, and this cool big sunroof. Here's us at the first charger, and guess what? Didn't work. So to wait for these other guys to hop off the chargers. This is another Hyundai Ioniq 5, pretty rare, there's only like 500 in the country. There's the charger that didn't work. Once we got into a charger that did work, I had to park halfway in a disabled spot just for the cord to reach. So it's a bit sketchy, just like our view. Once we got going again, we made it to Canberra, and look how nice this is. So worth it, right? So yeah, it was pretty in Canberra, but then we had to get back on the road. It's a 3-hour trip, so we had to go find some chargers. This one didn't work, and the Tesla wall chargers don't seem to work with the Hyundai Ioniq 5. These were taken up by some Nissan Leafs, and here's the same problem with this Tesla wall charger here. Luckily, this magnet was keeping me sane this whole time. Finally, we found a free charger after what felt like a long time, and here we go. Yes, excellent. I'm super happy, and it's super slow. So I didn't want to wait 4 hours to get 100%, so I had to find a fast charger. This fast charger was blocked by some utes. This one, we couldn't find it, even though it was on the maps. This one was taken up by another Tesla. And then we found this one in a car park, but it was the same speed as the one in IKEA. So we ended up having to jump back into Goulburn, charge there, and then finally made it home after all that.
When does a road trip become a mission? Because I would have packed up and gone back. I would have gone, and you know what I loved? I loved seeing the diesel car in the car charging spot. It's just like, yeah. I'll be there like,
No one uses these anyway.
I tell you what, though, these electric cars, I really like the look of them. They look mad, but
Boo!
I'm not paying $76,000 for one.
Well, and funnily enough, so I was speaking to a mechanic the other day regarding electric cars, and he said that everyone would have to become technicians, not so much mechanics. But he also said, yeah,
go on. Yeah, I'll chime in at the end.
He also said that they're building the batteries into the chassis so that you can't actually change the batteries in the car. So that means you have to throw the whole car out, right, after the batteries die. That's what they did with mobile phones. So I've got an old Nokia mobile phone, the first one that had a color screen, and you can take the battery out of it, and you used to chuck it and put a new battery in it. Now, right, with the iPhones and that, it's either a huge process to get a new battery, or you've had it for 3 years and you just chuck it anyway and get a new one. So that's what they're doing. Apparently, he was talking to somebody high up in the car game from a big motor company that I don't want to mention their name actually, and he was saying that they're putting the batteries into the chassis now where you can't remove the batteries. So that means a whole car after 4 to 5 years will be a waste.
Is he also aware that electric cars don't require servicing?
The mechanic
Yeah.
that I was speaking to, yeah, he knows that they don't require. He goes, it's basically brakes and tyres.
So what happens to the mechanic industry once everyone's driving the electric
Like
car?
Australian manufacturing and coal.
Gone.
Yeah. Gone. Do people realise this? Like, for me, I don't see a big problem with eventually I think we will get to electric cars, but there's all these problems along the way we have to sort out first. We can't have. I think we've got these politicians coming out and saying, "Oh, we should all have electric cars by 2030." Well, that's just not achievable.
I just don't understand why we have to.
Well, unless you're charging them with green energy, there's no point.
Or nuclear.
Well, that's what I mean.
One.
Green energy is nuclear, as far as I'm concerned. That's probably, I think, the greenest form of energy that we'll produce. And I think we're backwards if we're not using it. Just like when they got rid of the Concorde flying at supersonic speeds across the world, that we went backwards in the aviation industry. So that's my opinion. I just think the same thing with nuclear. Why, I don't know. We could have not had these intermittent power issues or this green energy issue if we had nuclear 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So,
but why do we have to transition to something other than what we've got? Whilst you've got other countries around the world building hundreds of coal-powered stations, like crazy. Like when India and China get to net zero, then let's talk about it.
100%.
We're not even in the same playing field at all.
I agree with you. I just don't. As I was saying to John before, the world as a whole is a cup. So unless everybody stops producing emissions negative to the environment, it doesn't matter if one does or if other countries do it and one country doesn't do it, it's negated anyway. There's no difference. It's just a bit slower process.
And Australia's a massive place. Like Sydney to Canberra is a 3-hour drive. That's considered like a short drive, really. Like, and it's not like Australia's like America where you have big cities all the way in the middle. Like, where are you going to charge? Like, if you're going to drive out west, out to Broken Hill, something like that, where are the charging stations? How are you going to get out?
Do you reckon there's a charging station at Belangolo State Forest?
I just want to know where I'm supposed to charge my electric car when I don't even have gutters in my street. Like, where are they going to put it? I don't have a garage, so...
They don't even have believe it or not, like most of Warringah, when I was doing letterboxing, there's not even footpaths. Like, we have to push the pram down the middle of the road most of the time.
Yeah, that's because you open the front door out onto the street.
No. Well, but if you live in a unit, and you only have one car space, but you're a 2-car family, and you have to park the other car miles away on the street down the road somewhere. How are you going to charge that second car?
But also, if you're in an apartment block that's got 400 residents, are they going to have 400 charging stations in that basement?
This is what I mean. No one talks about these in-between steps.
No, of course not, because they live in fantasy land and in their head it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows and beautiful, but they're not implementing a plan.
No, because they're living in, the people who are making the plans live in their ivory towers. And they might have 4 or 5 cars, but they've got all the money in the world that they need they can put 4 or 5 chargers in at 4 or 5 grand a pop. They can have all their cars parked in their driveways and in their garages. Okay, they don't think about the people the other people, the majority.
That's not a big stretch, Adam. I've seen it when I was walking around. I mean, I learned a lot doing letterboxing. Like, you see it. You see the cars in there with the little, I don't know what you call it. What do you call it? I guess the charger in the car, charging overnight. Well, if you can afford that, you have the space to do it. Fantastic. But the rest of us, we can't. I'd love to, but I can't.
It's impractical. I'm a tradesman. I do over 1,000 kilometres a week. I carry heavy loads in my van. It's a huge van, which would have 400 to 500 kilos worth of goods in it at any one time. Not to mention all my tools and stuff. How much efficiency would I get from running that on a battery? Would I be able to do a day's work at a battery? Would people let me charge my car at their house while I'm at the job? Would I have to pay people to do that kind of thing as well? I mean, throwing a battery on a cordless drill battery on charge to get your job done is one thing, but charging a car would be a significant cost to your energy bill.
And how long does it take to charge a car?
Well, it's 4 hours, isn't it? Wasn't it 4 hours? Wasn't he saying it was going to take 4 hours for him to charge, and that was meant to be a fast charging port?
But how sometimes you put your phone on charge, but the power point's not switched on, or it's not in properly, and you just think it's charging.
Yeah.
You can't tell me as a normal human that you're not going to make a mistake with car charging. You go to bed, you wake up in the morning, and you hadn't charged the car.
So then the government would have to put in forget to charge by car sick days. So instead of having 10 sick days a year, you'd have to have 12 or 13.
No, but I just think as a mum with 2 little ones, I want reliability. I want to get in a car and know it's going to go and take me where I need to go in a matter of urgency. And so to me, that's just I'm looking at that video thinking, imagine trying to do something fun with your family and you've got 2 kids in tow that are whinging and crying and you're trying to find a charging station.
Well, think about it now when you have a flat battery, Like it happened to me on Parramatta Road once. My battery died. Like it's nuts. Like you freak out. You're like, oh god.
100%.
Painful. It's painful. You know how many times I get a phone call, Adam, my car battery's flat, go get me one. So I have to go and buy another car battery. I don't even bother. I just go buy a battery now.
Yeah, so what do you do in the situation when it's an electric car?
Well, you can't even change the battery. You have to charge it. So then you'd have to
What do you do?
Well, what do you do? It's broken. It's literally broken down. Like done. And that would be like if you blow a head gasket or something in your car. You could not. You just cannot drive it. So when one of those, like I drove down to Victoria not too long ago. Like say last year, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning because we do a night drive, and we had 16 kilometres left. The little guy was telling me of driving to go before my car would run out of petrol.
Oh, yeah.
So you get off and you're looking for like the petrol station. Imagine if that happened with your electric car, and say that you say you've got 5 minutes left of energy left in the car, and it'd be pretty accurate, but you're 20 minutes away or 30 minutes away from a charging station. What do you do?
Well, you see how like petrol, like when you go driving like outside of Sydney, and go long distance drives, like you see those signs, last petrol station for 50 kilometres. Like the petrol stations are that sparse. How many these charging stations? Are they going to be all around Goulburn and little country towns and places like that? Like it might be okay to put them all around Sydney.
Well, in my country town, they just installed them, it would have been 18 months ago. There's only 2 of them. And yesterday I was there actually, the first time ever I've actually seen a car getting charged on it. But everyone was teasing it when it got installed. It was like where I live, it's like diesel this, diesel that.
Yeah.
Like, so they probably parked the diesel car there.
And then the diesel guy parks in the parking station and goes, yeah.
But even so, you can take like a jerry can in the boot with fuel, and like a funnel or whatever.
That's exactly right. You can, 20 litres of fuel will get you to the next petrol station.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? You can carry it anywhere. Can you what battery would you have to take? Like, do you take a spare battery with you? So you've got a car full of batteries, and then you're going to take another battery with you just to get you out of trouble?
See, I'm not so against electric cars as much as you guys are, but I still think we need to fix all the little or at least think about the little problems and the steps in between before we get there. Like, it's a long way away. Like,
Northern Beaches guys, come on. Northern Beaches people, come on, mate. Like,
have you seen some of the designs for electric cars? In China and America, like they're pretty cool.
The what?
The designs of some of the electric cars they got.
Yeah, but you can do that with petrol cars as well.
Yeah, true.
I saw one today. It was a Lexus LC 5000. I thought that was a pretty wild looking car. That was pretty cool. It was pretty fat and nice, and you can. My question is, why do they design electric cars with so much lights on them? Big screen taking in. Surely you could get more mileage out of it without having like this big LCD. My car has an LCD screen about this big, and then a little LCD screen on the dash. Okay, but you look at a Tesla and it's got an LCD screen on it like the size of my laptop.
Yeah.
And then it's got lights all down the doors and lights in the back and lights that run all the time. You're like, man, that's just using energy. You should have one light.
Did you get any of these supposed blackouts this week?
I didn't get them, but I'm not home enough to know if we've got blackouts or not.
Yeah.
None of us. Yeah, got the kids at
You're
school.
home at night, right?
At night I'm at home and we're sucking the power. I'm using a light. I'm using 5 computers. I've got my heater going on under the desk. I'm just juicing up. I've got the dryer going inside the house.
All right. So just to finish things off, we have moved over to Spotify, which should be easier for people, I hope. And hopefully we'll be on Apple. Look at that, guys. Check that out.
That's nice.
We even got a COVID-19, one of those
a warning banner.
warning banners, mate. We're
just killing it.
We're killing it, yeah. So
Yeah.
find us
Getting
on Spotify. We're on YouTube, and hopefully in the coming week or two, we'll be on Apple and Google podcasts as well. So thank you for everyone's support. And any closing comments, Adam?
Well, I would like to thank Dr. John Harries for being on. I was really excited to have, a nuclear specialist. It's not often that people like us get to even speak to these people, so it gives us opportunity to open up our mind and get the facts from people who actually know what's going on. And I've hopefully that he's been able to ease everyone's mind just that little bit who listens, and I'm excited for that. I'd like to thank you guys for being part of the team, like all our team. We're a team together, and can't wait till next week.
Nothing from me.
Ah.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.